We marched with Martin Luther King from 16th and Hamilton all the way to Cicero during his nonviolent movement. Martin Luther King wanted nonviolence, but we wasn't about that.
Right.
But when Pep instructed us to do that, that's what we done.
So hear what I say, for it is the truth you see. There can only be one, the original.
OG, two letters that define respect. Welcome to the original OGs. I created the original OGs to document the forgotten parts of American history. I want to recognize and give a voice to the men and women that have climbed to the top of their game. Believe me, the men and women that sit in front of this marquee have been authenticated as original OGs. My name is Mr. Rick. Welcome to my world, a world of the originals, the unique. Welcome to the original OGs. Hello, and welcome to the original OGs. And I'm your host, OG Mr. Rick. We have a very fascinating interview today, a person that has a deep history in what I call American history. We're gonna take this journey from the beginning of his adolescence all the way up into where he is now. We want to give you a better picture of his life and what he thought the purpose of it should be. My guest today is none other than the one and only Minister Rico. How you doing, bro?
I'm blessed, sir. How about yourself?
Fantastic, sir. So
Pleasure's mine.
it's my pleasure. I've waited for this a long time. You're like a big brother to me, a mentor and a guide, you know.
Thank you.
From the time we became friends, you've always treated me with a personal respect, and I hold on to that dearly. And at the same time, I've held you with a great respect, because coming up in the community in Chicago, especially on the west side, you were like this giant. You know, I can remember, and we're going to get to your story, but I need to say this. I knew this young lady, and we used to be at the club all the time. I wasn't dating her or anything like that, but she came in one night. She said, Mr. Rick, let me talk to you for a minute. I said, what's going on? She said, these guys followed me home the other day, and when I was parking my car in the garage, they jumped out, and I believe they were finna kidnap me, at least rob me. And I couldn't think of anything to say, but Minister Rico is my uncle. She said when she said that, they looked at each other, jumped in their car, and burnt off. I'm like, wow, really? I say that to demonstrate the power in the name Minister Rico. At that time, you were still incarcerated, and she just put that out there like that. So what I want to do, I want to step back a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your coming up with your mom, your family, what that situation was like, and how that may have molded you into your earlier thoughts as to what it is you desired to do and become in the community.
I was raised by my mother. My mother and I had 7 sisters.
Wow.
As a kid, I didn't have a father. My father left my mother when I was 2 years old.
Okay.
So I've always had that mother concept in my head that was my queen, that was my
Right.
God, that was my everything.
Yes, sir.
So I lived my life trying to please that woman.
Yes, sir.
And everything I done on behalf of making sure she was all right.
Yes, sir.
So as a kid, from maybe 8, 9 years old, I was doing things I had no business doing and didn't want her to know I was doing. But I knew I had to have some kind of income to help my mother take care of 4 other grown sisters of mine.
Yes, sir.
So I started doing things in the street.
Oh, I get it.
And I was robbing bus drivers, sticking up the pop trucks coming in the community, the cake trucks, the ice cream trucks. I did everything under the sun that would help bring me income to help me help my mother. So they sent me to St. Charles for doing all those things.
Right.
And my mother would come see me every week, man, every week praying for me. And I saw the burden that I was putting on my mother at an early age. So fighting was something I always was able to do.
Right.
I just wasn't trained to do.
Right.
So I left St. Charles and was sent to an industrial school called Sheridan.
Wow.
Sheridan started teaching me how to fight. And I learned fighting extremely well. By the time I was 10, 11 years old, I was able to whoop grown men.
Right.
So I stayed in Sheridan for like 3 years.
Wow.
It was an industrial school. It was a welfare. So they was able to keep you until you was old enough to come up out of there. When I come up out of there, I come up out of there with the ideal that I was going back to my community to do better.
Now, what was that experience like in St. Charles?
It was like a little school.
Oh, okay.
You went there, you lived in a cottage with maybe 29 to 35 people, other guys. Mm-hmm. You had a cottage parents, a mother and a father parent there.
Oh, okay.
And they would make you go to school every day,
Wow.
bring you home from school, bring you back to the cottage, try to teach you things, make you wax the floors, empty the garbage, clean up the kitchen. The little chores you would do at home if you was disciplined enough. I was too aggressive for St. Charles, so they wanted me up out of St. Charles. So they sent me to Sheridan.
Okay.
And Sheridan was an industrial school, like a welfare.
Okay.
And I went there and I met a guy by the name of Jim Reed, an old man named Jim Reed, an old white man. He was a professional fighter, and he ran the gym. And he liked it me. He said I had the heart to fight, I just didn't know how to fight. So he started teaching me. He started teaching me how to fight. And within a year and a half, I was one of his guys. I would be able to leave Sheridan and go to Johnny Kular's gym, Archimore gym, CYO, fighting for the institution. And I would bring the institution back a reputation. Because I could fight. It was a gift that I had. And with Mr. Reed's help, I learned to do it pretty well.
It seems like everybody was participating in, I know one of the gyms was the Archimore gym.
Yeah.
Seemed like everybody in the 16th Street area had some type of dealings with the Archimore gym. You began to fight for the Archimore gym?
Against Archimore gym.
From which gym?
From Sheridan.
Oh, so while you were in Sheridan?
In Sheridan,
you were
I was
fighting.
coming to the institutions in the street.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They call them furloughs.
Right.
They would furlough us to Archimore gym, Johnny Kular, CYO.
Wow.
Wherever they had boxing classes that we would go to them to challenge them.
Wow. That's interesting. Didn't
Yeah.
know that, because I knew a lot of guys in the community that had been in St. Charles.
Yeah.
You know, they would come out and tell the stories or what have you. But I didn't know they were furloughing you guys to...
Yeah, St. Charles didn't have a boxing program.
Oh, okay.
Only Sheridan.
Wow.
Because it was up under the welfare, so
Right.
St. Charles was up under the youth. So you couldn't have that in the institution there.
Okay. So you gained these skills, and like most people, upon gaining those skills began to give you, and this is a question, it's not a statement, began to give you the confidence that you could be in charge of your environment.
Whatever I wanted to be in charge of.
Right, yeah, okay. So while you're in Sheridan, does the Vice Lord idea begin to come to life?
let me clear something up for you right quick.
Yeah,
I'm not a founder of Vice Lords.
correct.
I'm a soldier of Vice Lords.
Yes, sir.
Vice Lords was created by a brother by the name of Eddie Perry, better known as Pepperlo. And my only desire, my only dream, my only hope was to manifest being his best soldier, to make his vision
Right.
the best that I knew how. And that was to protect my community.
Describe what Pep's vision looked like.
Pep vision was for us to go back to our community and uplift the community, raise the consciousness of us and the guys in the community to do better, to make our community not a rest haven for St. Charles and Sheridan's. He wanted to make us young men that could grow up to be about something, to develop something, to create something, to make something happen that would put us in a better position than where we were.
Right. So you come back to the community with what plan?
My plan was to implement the laws, the rules, and the love of Vice Lord
Okay. And how did you do that?
by recruiting guys, showing them what it was about to be about it, teaching them, sharing with them, and hoping that they could be as strong a follower as I am.
So you get on the streets, you begin to, as we say, recruit gentlemen
Young men,
to be a part of that
be a part
idea.
of Vice Lord.
Now, at this time, was there a rank structure?
No, it was pee-wees, midgets, and seniors.
Midgets.
Yeah.
Okay.
Midgets was the little boys.
Right.
Pee-wees was the juniors. And the seniors was the elders.
Okay. And you stood where?
All over.
All over.
Midget, pee-wees, and the seniors.
Okay. So you were kind of unique in your dealings.
In my, yes.
Okay. I grew up on 13th and Lawndale. So I've been surrounded by Vice Lords all my life. Three blocks from where I lived, 16th Street, which is known as the Holy City. Explain how the Holy City developed and the purpose for it.
It developed in 1969. The Holy City is from Roosevelt all the way to 22nd Street. From Kedzie all the way to Pulaski. So 13th and Lawndale is the Holy City as well. So weird.
Right.
16th Street is the heart of the Holy City.
Correct.
16th and Lawndale is where everything began and hopefully where everything will end. The Holy City was created because it was a area that we had control of.
Okay.
Wasn't nothing in that area but Vice Lords.
You ain't lying.
Every block, every corner, every gangway was Vice Lord. As we started growing, the head got so far from the tail. Pep suggested that we create chapters.
Okay.
And that's when we had to come up with young men sectioning off various areas to divide the community up so that it can grow under some kind of structure.
Right.
So we had the 13th Street, 16th Street, 18th Street, 19th, so on. And that structure came into what you would call today cliques,
Right. Wow.
branches.
Right. Branches.
And branches came into power struggles, conflict among ourselves.
Wow.
When the strong enough heads got removed, the lesser, stronger brothers started growing up, not taking nothing away from nobody, not giving nobody anything that didn't earn it,
Right.
but it takes a certain kind of man or a guy to lead a mass of people.
True.
And you got to first know what leadership is.
True.
And in order to know that, you got to first be that. You got to follow before you can ever try to lead.
That's what they say.
And a great leader is a strong follower. And today, from 1957 up until today, that's what I profess to be, a follower of Mr. Eddie Perry Pepperlo. And I will continue that until God Allah calls on this exchange.
That takes me to the point where we want to talk about the main vein of the Holy City, 16th Street. I can remember when I was very young. All of this was taking place when I was very young. And there were stores up and down 16th Street. As a shorty, to walk down 16th Street was a mind-blowing experience for me. I believe at that time, you all had started wearing gold Tams. You got these stores everywhere. The streets are clean, signs everywhere, and it was showing us a certain unity and strength. So how did the development, again, of this concept and what I'm explaining, how did it end up on 16th Street?
We had a clubhouse, which was a gangway like, that we used to have meetings, and we would always meet up, have our gatherings, and we named it the land of the people.
Okay.
And out of the land of the people, it was created as the Holy City.
Okay.
And we built from that. We had people like the Sears and Roebuck, the Ford Foundation, the DuPonts, the Rockefellers, that would come and donate money to that community for the rebuilding.
Wow.
And we created Afro Lounge, schools, pool halls, arts and craft shows. We tried to have everything in a community that you could think of that would help develop a community.
Okay.
And from that community, we owned it, everything from 16th and Kedzie all the way back to 16th and Pulaski.
Okay.
We
for
had
those that don't know, that's a nice little stretch.
school halls, we had pool halls, we had Afro lounges, we had security companies. Everything that those people's money could produce for us, we used it to better the conditions of that community. That's how we came about having the businesses that we had.
That sounds like a period, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a transition from they had labeled you all as gangs into an organization.
Organization.
So how does the organization come about?
In 1968, 69, we went into the form of Conservative Vice Lords Cooperation.
I want to talk about how this organization has created enough power that Dr. Martin Luther King, Reverend Jesse Jackson would come to you all and say, hey, I need to come over here so that you all can aid and assist me in what it is that I'm trying to do for our people in this country.
Dr. Martin Luther King came to 16th and Hamlin to not only act for aid and assist, but lived.
Yes, sir.
Jesse Jackson came from Kentucky or wherever he came from with Operation Breadbasket to the west side of Chicago.
Yes, sir.
Malcolm X came to 16th and Hamlin.
Yes, sir.
Dick Gregory came to 16th and Hamlin. They all lived in the same building, of which is now known as the Martin Luther King Building,
Yes, sir.
owned by a man by the name of Mr. Wallace.
Yes, sir.
We marched with Martin Luther King from 16th and Hamlin all the way to Cicero, doing his nonviolent movement. We was ordered to march with him because that's what Pep wanted us to do.
Right.
Martin Luther King wanted nonviolence, but we wasn't about that.
Right.
But when Pep instructed us to do that, that's what we done.
Exactly.
And from that, we gained a lot of respect from people that had money, that wanted to see the community do better, wanted to see us do better, and they started donating money to us as what they would call the government funds,
Right.
which none of us was able to really operate.
Right.
We took that money and misused it because we was not educated enough to take that money and build from it,
Understood.
and it costed a problem.
Back up a little bit. You say you marched from Hamlin
To Cicero, 16th and Cicero.
Was Cicero a dividing line?
Yes, sir.
That
Yeah.
You didn't cross Cicero. That's white.
Cicero was white folks.
Yeah.
You didn't go across there.
Right. So you chose to take it to Cicero, or King decided to take it to Cicero.
Cicero.
Do you know for what reason?
At that point, I didn't know.
What do you think?
But today, I think it was to show what he preached, that we all could live together. Black, white, brown, all of us could live together if we only had understanding about each other.
Right.
And that's what his purpose was, I'm assuming, for the marches,
But
the
that was kinda-
nonviolent marches.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Cicero is still controlled in a certain way to this day. So for you all to march into Cicero, you were pushing the envelope there.
Yes, we were, but we believed in us.
Right.
We believed in who we were. And we knew if we wasn't going to bring you no harm,
Right.
we didn't have to worry about no harm.
Did they oppose you?
They
with harm?
opposed, but we were strong enough to respect Mr. King and not react. Because at that time, you didn't have guns. You had
Right.
zip guns. You make out of antennas off of a car,
Right.
you know, and you put a 22 bullet in them
Right.
and pull a rubber band back and you shoot, you know.
Right.
And it was enough to shake up somebody if they didn't know what they was up
And
against.
hurt them.
Yeah, it hurt you. Yeah, it hurt you. And we was able to defer a lot of the attacks that were put up on us. But our purpose was to make sure we marched with this man so that they could see whatever his point was,
Right.
we was there to support it.
Exactly. You mentioned Malcolm also came in that area.
Malcolm came in the community. He lived in the same apartment that Martin Luther King lived in. But his concept was a little different
Yeah.
than Martin Luther King's concept.
Much different.
And that's where that fire and that anger came from. But it was by any means necessary to understand what truth was.
Right. When Malcolm, when he reached 16th Street, had he separated from the Nation of Islam? Or
No.
he was still with
He
the
was
Nation
still
of
with the
Islam?
Nation of Islam.
Oh, so now we're in a different frame of mind here.
Right.
So he's looking at a group of organized young men and he's saying what?
We needed a better understanding of each other. And that's when we got to understand what the Black Panthers was, how they was moving, what they was moving about. And Vice Lord started organizing a better concept of themselves
Okay.
and their community.
Okay.
And Vice Lord, Black Panthers, we all started seeing and being as one, but still different entities.
Fred Hampton Jr. and yourself were pretty good friends, would I say?
No, Fred Hampton
I mean,
Senior
senior. I'm sorry, I said junior, but senior.
is my friend.
Right, that's what I'm saying. You know what I'm trying to
His
say.
son
It's your friend too.
is my stepson. Like,
Right,
I raised him.
right. But I'm talking about his father.
Father, you talking about the daddy. Yeah, we grew up. And then when he came to Chicago, we learned about the food drives and all of that. How they was feeding the people, what they feeded the people about, how they fed the people. And we brought they set programs into our community.
Okay,
And in doing so, we became real close friends. Mark Clark, Chairman Fred, Louis Trulock, David Stock. Those was Black Panthers.
right,
And the Black Panthers was so powerful at that time that we didn't really understand the semantics of who they was against.
right,
And they was against the system, which was the police.
right.
And that's when 1969, that's when they killed Chairman Fred on the west side of Chicago.
We had mentioned Hanrahan. Well, I did. At this time now, I'm looking at this thing, and I'm sure you're looking back at it too, and I'm saying now the vice lords are fellowshipping and friendshipping with the Black Panthers. You're supporting Dr. Martin Luther King. You're communicating with Malcolm X. You have certain people in a position of authority that are saying, hey, this is a powder keg waiting to happen. How do we diffuse this without it getting out of control? One person comes to mind. I believe he was the head, the commander, whatever that position is, of the Chicago Police Department.
No, he was the state's attorney
State's attorney
of the Cook
city
County,
of Chicago.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
Cook County, which is a
and
very
he
large.
created this task force.
Okay,
And the system got with him and created the interlock of fundraisers and donations and all of this. And that's where that money came into exposure to the organizations in the city of Chicago. They started giving young street corner guys $400,000 and $500,000 a whop.
1969.
1968, 1969.
That's a hell of a lot of money back
That's
then.
a whole lot of money, you know. And then they would bring people in to donate money to us. And all of that money was put in to take out. At that time, we didn't understand that. We had no idea that $500,000 would cost you 20 years in the penitentiary.
Wow.
You know, so they gave us the money, and we, as they knew, would misappropriate government funds. And they started clipping off the heads of all of the organizations.
Looking back at that, and I know you've looked at it a lot more than I have. You look at what you just said, they're giving you this kind of money in 1968. That's crazy money, you know.
Yeah.
In comparison today, that might have been $5 million. But what comes to mind for me, we're looking at the gentleman that's creating this idea, saying, hey, okay, here's how we can trap them. Not only does he trap the vice lords, but he also goes at other organizations and lays down similar programs. And this allows them to start gathering up the heads of these organizations to put them in prison. After doing that, and all of these different heads are put in prison, they kind of, in my mind, create a situation that I think when they looked back at it, they said that that wasn't really in our best interest. Because when you put all these gentlemen, including yourself, I'm not saying that's why you were locked up, but you were there in this environment with these people. You guys end up in Stateville, Joliet, Pontiac, and you become a force that was just really unbelievable. How do you then take that in order to push back on what they were pushing on the organizations? And I want to clear that up. I want that they were putting on black people.
Well, I personally think that the plot was to eliminate the figureheads
Yes.
and create subsidiary figureheads that they can control.
Puppets.
Puppets, as you call it, yeah. So they brought in these subjects, and they brought in the thing they call now narcotics. And with these narcotics, the money that they was donating to us was nothing to what they was making off of narcotics.
Exactly.
And a man with a whole lot of money and no brain and no heart is a dangerous man. He don't care about you. He don't care about the community. And he has no plan for the future. So he don't mind sending 15 or 20 kids to prison
But to the graveyard.
or to the graveyard. So that's what took away, and the system learned that it was a mistake they did when they took the heads off of these bodies and put them inside the prisons. So the only retaliation we had inside of the prisons was to take what we knew best and make them pay from the inside. So you got a group of young men that never had an education or none of that, but we were smart enough to take a 400-year-old system and make you tear it down and rebuild a new system in order to deal with it. When I first went to prison, do you know you couldn't have no TVs, no radios,
Wow.
no clothes, no nothing. Commissary, no nothing. We went inside of that prison with the mentality that we had, that you had destroyed out here in our community, and made you turn your whole prison system around,
Wow.
made you build more prisons. And once we got inside of those prisons, we made you realize the mistakes you made. And we come to find out that we are not each other's problem. We was able to live together in prison. And that's when things started clicking.
Right.
And we started learning, if I can do this in this prison cell, I can do this in my community.
Okay.
I can teach these guys how to take this unity that we got inside and take it back to the outside.
That's a problem.
And that was the problem.
I want to back up a little bit. You said something about drugs came into the community, guns began to come in the community. Pretty much things that would derail what most of you gentlemen, the heads of these organizations, were trying to implement. For the younger audience, and I'm not saying adolescents or anything, just people a little bit younger than yourself or myself. Have you ever smoked a cigarette?
No,
Have you ever used a drug?
no,
All of that's foreign to you.
yeah.
You know, I'm asking because that's very important for people that admire and want to be a part of the organization. They need to understand that You never bought into that idea,
No, sir.
you know, and that is what a part of what you've tried to give back to the community.
Yes, sir.
How to create strength so you're not sidetracked by these vices. Because once you're addicted or subject to these things, then you can be controlled
By
them.
those things.
You've never done any of that.
No.
Pay attention to that. I fell victim to them, you know. It has always intrigued me because you have never engaged in any of that.
None of it.
Yeah, that has always intrigued me because it was all around you. You had the opportunity to use any of it or have any of it.
I experienced a set down inside of prisons. They call it ooch,
Okay.
something you make out of juice.
Yeah.
And I had some friends of mine to make it for me one time,
Right.
and I drunk it.
Wow.
And I got so intoxicated till I had to be locked up for 6 months
Wow.
because I had went to the warden's office and told him this was my penitentiary. And he looked at me like I was nuts. He said, this man got to be out of his mind, you know?
On something.
And he said, what has he been taking, you know? So they locked me up.
Right.
And that ooch had me so twisted up out of my head until a young brother, when I got out of segregation, a young brother told me, he said, you know what, minister? He said, you the best brother I could see or know. And when you drunk that juice, he said, man, your whole demeanor changed. He said, you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, that ain't for
He
you.
said, that
man.
takes away from you. And he hurt me so bad because he looked up to me.
Right.
He hurt me so bad till I stopped drinking that ooch. I've never drank it no more since that point, man. But I knew that anything that altered my thinking
Yes, sir.
was not what I needed in my system, because I would be back in the penitentiary once I got out of the penitentiary.
Right.
And I didn't want that,
I understand.
you know. If I didn't learn nothing, I learned that I can live among men and not have to do what I did to get to prison.
Right. And not have to use substances
Any substance.
that would alter your thinking and take you off your square that you need to be on in order to lead men.
Well, women and men.
Yes.
My organization
get to
is
that.
about women and men.
Yes. We're definitely going to
And
get to that.
I think my responsibility as a man to a people is to be an example.
Yes, sir.
And the only way I can be that is do that.
Exactly.
I got to be the message that I bring.
Yes, sir.
I can't talk about it and not be walking it.
Oh, no. That don't
So
work.
I try to walk what I talk.
So let me ask you, at what point in time did you begin to carry the title minister?
In 1974,
Okay.
we adapted the concept of Lords of Islam from the streets to Islam.
Okay.
And we used it as a prelude to keep from having to define who our leaders was.
Okay.
And the only way I knew how to do that was to study. Go to the Nation of Islam, who I know the system was already after, and get the Nation of Islam approval to be vanguards to the Nation of Islam so that Vice Lord would be protected throughout the years. That's why you see me sitting here talking to you right now and not down there in that prison that they got down there for
Right.
for Larry
Right.
and Malik, Gino, I knew that I had to do something to protect the people and the cause of this struggle.
Right.
And the only way I could do that was to legitimatize what I was doing.
Right. So you would say that Islam was a character builder for you?
Islam was a life for me.
Yes.
Islam was a life for me. It helped me help a whole nation of people.
Right.
And if you go back into the books and you go back into the history, you'll see that anywhere you went, Islam gave us purpose, gave us respect, gave us love, and gave us understanding of other people.
Yes.
And I built off of that.
In building off of that and instituting that in the organization, were there some or a lot of people that didn't want to go in that direction?
Still a lot of people that's not
Okay.
in that direction.
I get it.
But that doesn't stop me from doing my job.
Right.
And my job is to educate. I can't force you to do nothing,
Right.
but I can definitely teach you.
Yes, sir.
Now, you accepting it, that's your choice.
Or
My job is being done when I'm educating you. I'm giving you the best tools I got.
Right.
Now, if you don't take these tools, that's your shortcomings. If you utilize these tools, you won't have to experience what Minister Rico experienced. That's 42 years of your life in a prison cell.
I don't think you want to experience that.
And that's what my job is today.
So you end up going to prison as an adult for and when?
I went to prison in 1970 for murder.
Okay.
And I stayed in prison 42 years, 8 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days.
Wow. That's a hell of a long time.
The 42 years I was in prison, I was sent to every prison in the state of Illinois 3 times,
Wow.
and 5 prisons outside of the state of Illinois.
Wow. That's interesting in this regard. Going in every prison in the system of Illinois 3 times means that you would have had to encounter people such as Larry Hoover, Jeff Ford, the list goes on. In doing so, me knowing that you're an intelligent guy and you can talk with anybody, I've seen you do it, how did that work when you encountered these different brothers?
I knew Jeff Ford before he came to prison.
Mm-hmm.
I knew him through his relationship with me and my organization, and my relationship with him and their organization. He was a brother by the name of Eugene Harrison. They call him Bull. Abraham was his holy name. He was the original leader of the Blackstone Rangers.
This show has the intent to define what a real OG is, what an original OG is. My partner and I have developed a method to ensure that if someone should sit in front of this OG logo, that they have been authenticated and found to be true in their history as far as what an OG is. You're one of the people that all of these guys, gentlemen, would have had to experience some part of their lives with you. Every one of these gentlemen that we're talking about has been in the prison system, rightfully or wrongfully, however it's described. But in that process, somewhere in that process, they had to deal with the minister.
Oh yeah.
You know, so that that's the unique thing about our conversation, and it is my understanding that most of those were pretty good relationships.
If I had to label those relationships, I would put them as some of the most profound relationships I've had in my life.
Wow, that's powerful.
I fought Larry. I sometime went against Jeff, who was Chief Malik. I sometime went against David. I sometime went against Don. I sometime went against Gino, the Latin Kings. But I've always had respect for their organization.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes the men might do things that I disapprove of or I object to,
Right.
and I would give my opinions about it, and it wouldn't set right with some of them.
Right.
And we would have our words back and forth. But we always had enough respect for our organizations to respect each other's opinion. It's all right to disagree, but at the same time agree. And in some cases, we had to go to fight.
I get it.
You know, we had to go to fight. But we was always able to get back on track. Those relationships are some of the most profound relationships I've ever encountered in my life.
Wow.
And right today, Larry Hoover is one of my best friends.
That's powerful.
Jeff Ford is my little brother.
That's powerful, man.
You know, Gino is one of the most righteous and trustworthy guys you want to find.
Wow.
And I met a few guys in New Mexico. They were Mexican mafias. And I've never met people that didn't know me that respected me out of the respect I got from the Mexican mafias
Wow.
in New Mexico.
Wow.
And I left there with an understanding, man, that I have gained some friends that respected my beliefs. And when you find a man that can respect your beliefs, you have to respect his opinions. And today, I've been home now going on 11 and a half years.
That was quick.
We are still friends today, and they're still in prison.
Most of you guys that have carried this thing over the years have a very good relationship. Is that correct?
Yes.
Meaning that if we took the time to try to communicate, we could probably put ourselves in a better position than what we're in now. And I'm not just talking about black folk. You mentioned a lot of folk.
I believe if the doors of communication was open, especially to the young generation today, and that they could see the Minister Ricos, the Larry Hoovers, the Chief Maliks, the Gino Corleones, if they could see those guys in raw form, they would know that they're not each other's enemy. They got more in common than they do discommon.
I think that is the thing that the powers that be definitely don't want them to see.
It goes back to another saying, you know, you can lead a horse to the straw, but you can't force him to drink.
I get it.
And that's what people, you could bring our kids to the schoolhouse, but you can't go in there and sit with them. And if you don't reinforce what they go in there and get that day, you might as well not take them up there, period.
You're wasting your time.
You're wasting your time.
Wow.
We have to work with these kids day and night to talk down to these young guys out here. Is more of a hurt than it is a help.
I agree.
And that's purposely what I have been doing for the last 10 years, trying to show them that me and Larry's not enemies, man.
Wow.
we's not enemies. And my young guys and his young guys need to know that. What we destroying today is what our kids and our grandkids will have to try to rebuild tomorrow.
Understood. You guys are not enemies. And how you really have the same goals for the betterment of our people.
Of our people.
And being inside that conversation, what was if your relationship with David Boxtel?
Oh man. I knew David before I knew Larry. I knew David before I knew Jeff. I knew David before I knew Bull.
Wow.
Me and David Boxtel grew up in Sheridan together,
Wow.
working in the kitchen
Yes, sir.
in 1959, man.
Wow.
We was little boys, and we was working in the kitchen. He was in the kitchen, I was in the shoe shop.
Wow.
But that's where we learned how to fight at. And every evening, we would all go to the gym, get our work in,
Wow.
come back, take our showers, sit on the side of our beds, watch a little TV, and talk and signify and laugh and joke. Me and David grew up as little bitty boys together. Never had a problem with each other. Wow. Never. I don't even think me and David ever had an argument.
Wow.
Yeah, David Boxtel.
That's very important for people to hear, because it has gotten to the point that the term opposition has become a household word. It's insane.
And I don't even know what it means.
Where did it come from?
Yeah, I don't know what it means.
It's to our disadvantage, whatever it means. Because if we're all being victimized in the same manner, then it would definitely be and is to our disadvantage to say that we're opposition of each other and we're being victimized in the same manner. That's crazy.
Yes, it is. And to comment on that, I've seen, as you call it, quote, oppositions being put in the same cell, eating the same food, eating the same commissary, drinking the same coffee, and you don't even know him from him.
Wow.
You don't know one from the other.
Wow.
You get up to get your mail, you bring me my mail. So how could I be your opposition and you living and sleeping in the same room with me?
Are you hearing that? Now you're forced to deal with each other as men, ignorantly or intelligently.
And you're doing it.
And you really realize that you like each other.
You like each other. and I'm not your opposition.
Right. So for me to leave the institution, or we don't even have to go that far, to leave and get another sale from you, and then all of a sudden begin to think differently, that's insanity. I want to talk a little bit about your book. What inspired you to write your book?
Pain, first of all.
Okay, emphasize on
Pain, first of all. Learning responsibility, another. I did more damage going to prison than I did being in prison.
Wow.
After getting in prison, I realized that I wasn't educated enough to have influence, control, and call myself guiding somebody
Wow.
from one block to the next.
Wow.
And once I got in prison and I started learning who I was, I learned the damage that I had did to a whole lot of young men's lives.
Wow.
And I said to myself, the best thing that I could do while I'm in this prison is to admit to all those guys that I call myself leading, let them know how wrong I was
Wow.
and where I plan to right my wrong at. And that's when I came up with From Disgrace to Dignity
Wow.
through a professor I met at the University of Northern Illinois, Mr. Clement D. Bartolis.
Wow.
And that book gave me the incentive to put back some of what I tore down. And from that book, I came up with another book called The Aisha Sisters, to put back some respect to the black women that I had took away from them because of the lifestyle that I live.
Yes, sir.
And I guess I just went book crazy for a couple of years, trying to redeem myself.
So I read your book a couple of times. Interesting. Took me on the journey as a little boy, following you through what you were saying in your book, reliving my life. Because, like I said, I was raised on 13th and Lawndale. So the things that you talk about, I'm surrounded by. So I'm reading this book, and I'm able to somewhat take the journey with you. Very, very intriguing. The Holy City was one of the first places that gave me the belief that black people were capable of doing something for self. I saw it with my own eyes, the game rooms and the pool and the shoe stores and the different things. I saw this, and the brothers standing there with so much dignity. I as a child, I had never seen anything like that. The gold Tams blew my mind. So that gave me a sense of direction from a distance. But what I'd like for you to expound on the sisters' involvement.
You say you read my book a couple of times?
Yes, sir.
Most guys think that because I am Rico Johnson,
Yes, sir.
that I'm driving Cadillac cars and
Right.
kicking doors open
Right.
and all of that.
Right.
In my book, it shows you, no matter how dogmatic I might appear to be in the streets,
Right.
I was a mama's boy.
Yes, sir.
I was a mama's boy for
Yes, sir.
real.
Yes, sir.
I loved, respect, and honored my mother.
Yes, sir.
And I had 7 sisters, man. And I saw what women have to go through being in them streets in order to sustain themselves. May it be because they thought they cared about somebody or somebody was tricking them. Whatever the reasons were, I knew what they had to go through. I didn't want that for my sisters.
I get it.
I didn't want that for my mother.
I get it.
And by me playing a role in that, when I did get to prison and started talking about the redemption for Rico Johnson, I had to have a redemption for the Aisha sisters.
Oh, yes, sir.
I had to redeem myself for the role I played in the misleading of their life as well.
Yes, sir.
So I went to the Quran, I come up with a lesson. Everything I got, the Lords of Islam, the Aisha sisters, come out of quotations from the Holy Quran.
Yes, sir.
And that was to raise their consciousness that they could be strong black women without being prosecuted on the street,
Wow.
without being subjective to a man, any man. And in doing so, I have 27 states right now with Aisha sisters in them.
Wow.
And the same with Lords of Islam.
Yes, sir.
And my program from each one of those organizations is Youth Against Gang Activities.
Wow.
They call it YAGA.
Wow.
And that's why that man, it's just so much that I think guys like myself owe back to our communities for the damage that we did in our darkness,
I get it.
because we were headstrong in negativity, man,
I get it.
and didn't want to accept it.
I
And
get
in my case, I don't know about nobody else's, but in my case, prison awakened me to that and taught me that I had to do something to better those conditions. And whether you believe me or not, Mr. Rick, you know I'm an ordained minister.
You know, I know that.
You know, I'm an ordained minister. And there's no way in the world you can go into a prison system the way I went into a prison system and come out of there without being scathed. I have never been stabbed. I have never been hit in the head. I have never been beaten down without the protection of a law surrounding me, man.
But you know, while you were in prison, on the streets, the word was you was everybody's minister.
I was trying to be everybody's minister.
Well, it out here, that was the talk. You know, I've had the pleasure of being with you. I think you and I were together consistently for a couple of years.
Right?
I learned more about Islam and, well, not Islam, vice lords, and the history of things, being with you and traveling with you and dealing with brothers in many, many different locations. I think I learned more in that 2 years than a lot of guys may have learned in a lifetime, just by being with you and bearing witness to it with my own eyes. You know, so when you say certain things, you know, I'm well aware of them, you know. Funny thing, man, and this ain't about me, but it's just an experience. You and I, we always talk about my cousin, Honest John.
Yes, sir.
Honest John used to send you packages, I believe it was to Stateville back in, that had to be the early 80s.
80s.
The person really sending you those packages was me. But because he and I was like that, and he knew you, and you all were like that, you didn't know me from Adam.
Adam.
You know, but he said, hey man, I need to do this for the minister. I had so much respect for you, even though I didn't know you. I knew what you had been going through and how you had carried the thing. It was with me, it was whatever he said, because you and I both know that brother bleeds Vice Lord.
Oh, yes, sir.
Lord have mercy.
Yes, sir.
That's his life, you know, so he would carry that thing. And he said, hey man, I had to do this for the minister. I was like, hey man, make that happen. I never said anything to you about it. It's the first time I ever mentioned it. But, you know, that was my respect for you. And then when you got out and we started talking and you said, well, okay, well, why don't you handle this, that, and the other for me? I was honored, brother.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
still honored
Thank
to be
you.
your friend.
Thank you.
Very much
And
so.
likewise.
You know, you've been a person we've always talked, and I would say to you, hey man, look, you know, I got some things going, and when they happen, we have to tell your story. Well, this is that day. You know, I have a partner that I say is a genius when it comes to all these lights and all this stuff you see here. I've never met anybody that could create situations and tell stories the way that this brother does, in a unique manner. And I've been around this stuff for some time.
Right.
About 30 years of in and out of this stuff. But I've never met anyone that could do it as creatively as he can. And I think we extend that to you. Another experience that leads me into the next part of this journey, I remember you and we went to Bobby's funeral together.
Yes, sir.
You know, you blessed me to go with you for that occasion. What was it like coming up with Bobby Gore?
Bobby, at our first meeting, was not a vice lord.
Okay,
He was a brave, and we fought the Braves.
okay,
And the Braves was not as strong as we was. So we crushed the Braves.
right,
Bobby became a vice lord. And thank God he became a vice lord because he brought a wealth of intelligence.
wow,
Everything that you see Vice Lord built on 16th Street,
yes, sir,
Bobby Gore was the instrument to it.
wow,
Spite of what guys might say, Bobby Gore was the instrument to putting Vice Lord on the map as being a legitimacy.
wow, that's heavy.
And he was so intelligent that when he came to prison, he made everybody that was within his arm reach go to school. You, get over here with me. You know, I'm a licensed barber because Bobby was a licensed barber.
Okay,
Marty a licensed barber because Bobby was a licensed barber.
wow,
He wanted to make sure everybody had some kind of tool to work with.
to be able to survive.
And you can't do nothing but respect him. He was not a forceful individual or very physical individual, but he was extremely intelligent. Extremely intelligent. And I respected that part of him. I'd been his strength.
Right, I get that. I've had the pleasure of meeting him several times through you. We would go out there and you'd fraternize with him about whatever you needed to talk to. And I had the honor of going with you and you allowing me to be in some of those conversations. But you brought up something that I want to stop with for a minute. Now, I keep mentioning Honest John. That's my cousin. We grew up together like that. Honest John is a vice lord through and through. I don't want to say that in a negative way. I don't want them people to try to use that against him because that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about his heart in the best interest of black people is looked at through the organization in a positive way. And he introduced me to a brother, and I really liked the brother, admired what he had done, even though he was having some issues at the time, but I still held him in great regard, and that was Mahdi. What was your relationship like with Mahdi?
We childhood buddies. Wow. We grew up together. From Jew Boy
Oh, wow.
to Sammy, from Sammy to Marty, from Marty back to Sam Smith. I've been knowing him all his life. He's been knowing me all my life.
In the relationship of you and Jeff, and that's for the audience, his son, Wakita, what is your relationship like with him?
In Wakita's mind, he looked at me as if I am Jeff.
Beautiful.
Malik is locked up right now.
Beautiful.
So I'm the next sound judgment he used for his decision making.
Beautiful.
He's my son.
A beautiful thing. I saw that when he celebrated his father's birthday with a party. I saw the love he had for you. I think people need to see these type of things because I think some people, a lot of people are misunderstood with how these relationships exist. Your 42 years in prison set a dynamic in the prison amongst the different organizations and brothers in a way that I don't think anyone else was able to do.
Thank you.
I mean, no matter what organization you were in, you were everybody's minister. They didn't have to say Minister Rico. I don't care what organization they was in. They would say, well, you know, the minister so-and-so, so-and-so. Everybody knew who they was talking about.
Right.
I don't think anyone has been successful in that way. And like you said, 42 years and not a scratch. That's really next to impossible to do. The average person that comes on this show with that type of stature, they have all described to me how many times they were stabbed, how many times this happened, that happened. Now, there was in the prison system a merge of all the organizations. How did that affect you, and how did you participate in that?
When you say emerge,
When the brothers, there was the main 21 on one hand, and then there was another merge, whereas all the brothers came together to speak against the present system and to try to get brothers on the outside to understand what they were trying to implement in order to create a better situation on the streets.
I think you was talking in terms of the LSD form that we had before we came to prison.
Correct.
We had that before we came to prison. Once we got in prison, we had a better avenue how to work it. And I think we came together inside to try to reach outside and curb a lot of the negativity.
Yes, sir.
And the only way we saw fit to do that was to allow everybody to be everybody. Everybody be their own man, but at the same time, let's be each other's man. I'm your brother's keeper.
Yes, sir.
We got to watch each other to make sure that we change these conditions, because if we're not doing it, somebody else going to do it. And that somebody else is the powers to be.
Exactly.
And their job is to make sure they keep people like you and me in those cells.
Yes,
That's
sir.
what keeps them with a job.
Yes, sir. At one point in my life, I was a younger person. At some point in your life, you were a younger person. Someone, hopefully, spoke to us.
Right.
Because the goal is to become an OG.
The only thing I can suggest to the young brothers today is please, man, please. Don't judge what I have done, judge what I am doing as of now. And it's an old saying in the book, experience is the best teacher, but advice is better than a sacrifice.
Wow.
I'd rather see you standing with me than to see you going against me.
Wow.
Please take these words, man, and work with your brother next to you. Know that y'all are not each other's opposition. Know that you can love each other, work with each other, and build with each other, and never have to change names.
When I was younger, I looked at brothers like you and Bull and Jeff and Larry, and at a young age, not knowing the difference, they were much older than I was, and probably in their 20s. I'm definitely in their 20s. But for me, that was an OG. And it set a tone in my mind how I needed to structure my life to become that. But now, being 65 years old, thank you, I know I don't look it, thank you. But being 65 years old, that has a whole nother meaning for me. I'm trying to be a different type of OG because of my experiences in life. For you, how would you describe an OG?
I would describe an OG as someone who has experienced all of the things that you are experiencing, and to try to take that experience and show you a better way,
Wow.
and to make that better way so that I heard you say you had made it to 65. That's a good step toward making it. I know you didn't look it. I'm 78
And don't look it.
and I don't look it. So if you continue to listen, I'm almost sure you can get to that 78.
See what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
That's what I'm talking about. You know, and that's the idea when we say OG. You know, that it comes with a sense of pride. It's an honor when someone puts that title on you because you understand it communicates, you know, and younger guys may find something in that to start striving
Toward that.
you know, so that there's a goal. Because a lot of times in life, we go through life without a goal or a negative goal. One way that we can look back in the past and see that is by reading your book and then looking at your person. And we can see what that journey was like. Where can they get your book from?
You can go to Amazon and look up Dr. Clement D. Bartolus, The Redemption of Rico Johnson, From Disgrace to Dignity, by Willie Rico Johnson.
As I've said, I've read it twice. It's a good read. It's a better understanding. And it's a roadmap of a lot of things that would express to you what you might not want to do. Because 42 years in prison, brother.
Is a lesson to be learned.
Being able to come back out here and live life, that's a hell of a challenge to accept. The average person that was there that long didn't come home, you know.
I'm thankful for God, man, that I was able to come up out of there in my right state of mind. My health is good except for my old age diabetes. And I had God's blessing.
For the 10, 12 years that I've known you personally, I've never known you to be a swearing man. I've never known you to be a smoking man. I've never known you to be intoxicated on anything. I've seen you drink a beer or two, about as far as it goes. I'm saying this to say that I attempted to do that in my life under Islam. I didn't have enough discipline to do it, so I kept falling off the wagon. Today I'm solid. But to see that in you, brother, that's amazing, man.
Thank you.
I just got to say it. That in itself is a lesson. So if people like what they're hearing from Minister Rico, and I'm sure they do, what programs do you have that would allow them to interface with what they're hearing?
Okay, Yaga is a program I do. It's called Yaga, Youth Against Gang Activities, what it spells out. You can go on Facebook and you can find Yaga. Aisha Sisterhood is a program to educate, uplift, and re-conscientize the Black woman. Okay. You can also go on Facebook and find the Aisha Sisters program.
Good deal. You know, before I forget, and I've said it to myself several times before we leave, there's a young lady, sister, that we call Big Sue.
Yeah.
Big Sue has been down with your Aisha sisters for God knows how long, man.
Queen Sue.
Queen Sue. So before I forget, I just want to send a shout out to Queen Sue.
Thank you.
You know, I mean, that's my sister, man. My sister love us some Mr. Rico. She definitely love us some Minister Rico.
Yes, sir.
So I just want you to know, sister, we love you and you're always with us. So with that, we're going to end this thing, brother.
Pleasure
Thank
as
you.
always.
One thing I can say, I know for sure, we'll be friends
For life.
the rest of our days.
Yes, sir.
Ain't no
Alhamdulillah.
secret to it. We have created this show so that men and women alike can come forward and tell their truth. If you have people that you believe to be an OG, go into the comment section, write us, let us know where to find the history so that we can authenticate it, bring them on the show, tell their story so that we can add to the American history. That's it. That's all.
The original OG.
The original OG.